Hi everyone, Tea Drinker here, and today I'm reacting to Shogun, episode 5. Oh boy, that's not a good start to any story. I mean, people would have actually been blown to pieces, so I'm glad that they showed that. Oh boy, it's all kicking off. Wow, that is quite a lot. That's great to see. Oh, I wonder if she's gonna feel guilty. I've said it a few times now, and I will just say it again. Love this opening title sequence. I think it's really, really stunning. I love when the brass comes in around this point. Yeah, that sounds so good. Frederick Iotoye. Right, what's gonna happen? I'm excited. Broken to the fist. Yikes. That doesn't sound comforting. But how are they going to impeach him with just a 4? Yeah. Interesting to see the level of classism from him. And religious bigotry as well. Or a curse, some might say. Yeah, what's gonna happen? Oh, that might be a little bit awkward. Well, it sure as hell wasn't hers. Yep. He's such a fantastic actor. Broken to another man's fist. That's her turn. Well, he's right to do that. I said it in the last episode, and it applies to here too. I like how the sun acts as a great foil for Toranaga's character. You know, so often in storytelling, a character is defined by the characters around them. So having the sun kind of act as a contrast to Toranaga is really strong in this case.
As I live and breathe. The most precious gift there is.
Hi, Blackthorn.
You see that? Watch this. Mite kudasai.
Mite kudasai.
Now, this next part is very important.
It's so interesting because now they're regarding him as a barbarian.
Kinzuru. Hai.
He's getting better.
Sawattara shinu.
Oh my god, they must be so confused by him. Yeah, literally. Hello, Lord Toda. Oh, damn, she's brave, just talking back to him like that. Oh, to see that wheel turning in his head. Yep. Are you though? But how long would they actually last with that kind of a tactic? I'm so interested to see more of the backstory with Omi as well. And I'm also curious to see how afraid Yabushige is for Omi's sake. Is he afraid? Oh, okay. That's where he's going with that. The actor playing Omi is doing a fantastic job. I'm really, really liking the acting in this show. Well, why do you think?
Is there anything you feel like should be preparing for? Dinner. Dinner.
Even though you know that so much of this is just kind of going through the motions, I still love seeing the amount of civility they have towards one another.
Tell Toda-sama it's a relief he was able to escape Osaka, and an honor for him to have observed our cannon regiment today.
Very respectful. Very confident.
In the hands of a true samurai.
Oh, perhaps we should have a friendly contest sometime.
Are they serving the rotten pheasant right now?
Now, for my esteemed guests on this...
Oh Christ, Blackthorn, what are you doing?
English rabbit stew.
Nothing like a bit of English cuisine to set the mood.
Oh, please. Eat.
I just love the himbo energy Blackthorn radiates. Maybe he'll like it. I mean, same, to be honest.
My husband comments on the way you eat your noodles. The sound you make while eating reveals the depth of your pleasure.
Who knows? Maybe they'll be friends. Oh, great. Are they turning this into a pissing contest now? Love that. That's great. That's really, really good.
You know, where I come from, only women drink from a tiny cup like that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, no, he actually is turning this into a pissing contest. Love that for us.
This is how we drink.
Prior to shooting this reaction, I actually watched the very first episode of Dragon Ball from 1986. So the idea of a human also being a monkey is very apt in my head right now. Yeah, here's the beginning of the real conflict now. Oh, Blackthorn, what are you doing? Blackthorn, Blackthorn! Oh god, I was so afraid he was going to jump in front of the arrow. Oh, I bet the filmmakers loved shooting that.
Get out of the fucking way!
That's so tense. Oh. God, I hate this guy. I suppose the story's doing a good job after making me hate this guy.
But I believe strongly that his wife merits better.
There's no way she's going to translate that. Oh, she's actually doing it. Wow, it's all coming out of the woodwork now. What's he going to say? Ah, that's where so much of his disdain comes from her background. Yeah.
Because my husband orders me to live.
Holy shit. That has got to be one of the strongest scenes of the series so far. Really, really great stuff. Oh, no, 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 don't let that happen. Oh, no, I don't want to hear that. Oh, this is such a brilliant story. This is such a brilliant story. Great shot. Fantastic shot. Man, this story is blowing my mind, honestly. God, it hasn't even ended yet, and I think this might be my favorite episode of the whole series.
But she knows nothing and we say nothing. Because our silence is what she merits.
Mm-hmm.
I will give my husband nothing, not even my hatred. Because that is what he merits.
Wow. Holy...
I would not expect for you to understand.
He understands a lot better than you think. I'm really, really enjoying the dialogue of this show. What's occurred? Has something happened to him? Or to her?
What is it?
Uejiro.
Oh, the gardener.
Did he kill himself out of shame for taking the bird? Yeah, had a feeling something like that might happen. Oh, it's so interesting seeing the conflict of customs and values. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Toranaga knows what's up. Oh my god. Whoa. Whoa. Oh my god. No, 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 don't let him be dead. Oh, thank god. I was not ready for Toranaga to be dead. I wonder how historically accurate this particular event was. Well, a dead bird is the least of their worries now. I think the show just does such a great job of showing how tyrannical Japanese culture is without being condescending. Oh, he's lifting the stone. Is that not... Oh yeah, good. I'm glad that wasn't the end. Oh, very interesting. Great cover. Oh, that was very, very clever. Does Yabushige see right through him, I wonder? The night shots of Osaka are unbelievable. Okay, so we've gotten our introduction to her. Oh, interesting to see her thrown into the mix now. Does she have that type of power? I didn't understand that. Now, is that the end of the episode? Yep, and that's it. Alright. Yeah, so that was probably my favorite episode of the series thus far. I can't believe we're already halfway through. There definitely is a lot more story to come. I was expecting there to be more of a fallout with the conflict with the conflict between Toranaga and Ishido in the previous episode, with how that episode ended with the literal cannons going off. So I kind of thought that maybe to do with the pacing, that would happen like right away. It seems like they're kind of holding off on that a little bit just to give us more exposition with the characters. I think that they're doing a really great job with Blackthorn, just kind of reinforcing the type of man he is. Again, from a historical accuracy point of view, they're doing a great job showing how the likes of natural disasters will end up affecting the world of these characters. And, you know, finally with the character of Mariko, seeing the way in which she is conflicted on so many facets of life, trying to navigate her past as well as her present, as well as her future, all three of them, which seem to be filled with nothing but conflict. But that's pretty much it insofar as my reaction goes. And now here is the review. So for this review, I'm just going to quickly go through all the things that stood out to me in this episode. The first of all being that even though we had the previously on Shogun recap, for me personally, I still did not see Buntaro coming out of this at all. I mean, it's so obvious in hindsight, the fact that when we saw him sacrifice himself for the rest of the clan, that we didn't explicitly see him die. We just saw him being let off. And I think that the show did a good job there in that they had the ambiguity of that moment lead to a lot of audience members presumably thinking, oh, will he or won't he actually make it out alive? For me, I fully accepted the fact that he died at that moment. So again, even with him popping up in the previously on Shogun recap at the beginning of the episode, I was still very much surprised by that. And I thought it was great conflict for the likes of Mariko, which we'll address in a second. But, you know, towards the opening, you had... I loved that Regency, and I said it in the reaction itself, but I loved being able to see the degree of both religious and classist bigotry that exists there with the dialogue between Ishido and Kuriyama. I really, really like that. So then, I suppose that does bring us to when Mariko does learn of her husband being alive, the conversation she has with Toranaga. I mean, just the expression on her face, learning all this information, just coming to this realization that she is still trapped. She very much sees her husband as a curse, which is a great contrast to Toranaga explicitly saying how her husband is a miracle. And him then saying that Buntaro is to live with yourself and Blackthorn, that inciting incident for Mariko for the rest of the episode, and then how that's eventually going to pay off with us learning more about her, I thought was just so strong. But again, in that moment when Toranaga says that to her, it's very much a oh shit moment for us as audience members, because we realize, we know the type of man that Buntaro is, and from us now having the knowledge that Buntaro doesn't, that her and Blackthorn had sex, it creates a great tension for us just right at the beginning of the episode. I thought that when Nagakado comes up, he, talking to the father, he I mentioned it in the previous episode how the older warriors act as a great foil for Nagakado, and now here it is happening the other way around, in which he himself is acting as a foil for Toranaga. We are able to see such a sharp sense of contrast between the two men there. Well, one of them is a man, the other is a boy. As the scene continues, and Toranaga refers to humans as animals, it's very humble. It's very, I suppose what you could say, Japanese in the sense of this particular show, of how they view themselves as just creatures living within this world, that they are so much affected by the environment that surrounds them, and the role environment plays in a show such as this we'll talk about later on as I go through the episode. But just that moment of him chastising his son and using analogies of animals to really drive that point home, I thought was very, very strong. I thought there was great dark humor in watching Josen's head being wrapped up in the way that it is. It wasn't, like the fanciest thing in the world necessarily, but just to have it in the box and wrapped the way it is, being brought to Ishido in that way, I thought was it just, again, that level of civility, I suppose you could say, in that kind of way. Well, obviously the argument can be made is that they don't want to cause a mess with a severed head either. But, nonetheless, even just seeing the way it is presented, though, just seeing the way it's presented very formally to Ishido, as if someone were delivering a special package for him, or delivering some sort of desired good for him. I know, just that little moment like there, I just had to mention, because I thought, for me as an audience member, it was just so morbidly ironic what was happening in that moment. So moving on from that, you had Fuji doing absolutely nothing. Fuji I'm really liking as a character. We're only seeing her for bits and pieces thus far, and I didn't think she'd even come back into it after our brief scene with her in episode 1. But, that scene where she is doing absolutely nothing to dissuade Buntaro from thinking that Mariko has had sex with Blackthorn when he's in the house. I really like the actor as well. I think she's doing a great job. But just seeing how brave Fuji is getting, I was not expecting her to pull a gun on Omi in the previous episode at all. That completely took me by surprise. So, seeing her she could very much have gotten punished for doing it in that kind of a way. But again, you see, she didn't explicitly say anything. So much of it was just based on what she wasn't saying. She had so much plausible deniability there. She's very similar to Yabushige in a sense, which will be coming up very shortly. But I guess both of them are a great kind of comparison in that kind of a sense. So yeah, I really like seeing Fuji for those reasons. So that does bring us directly on to what Yabushige was doing in this episode, his conversation with Toranaga. And, watching this, I was thinking to myself, it must be hard to direct Japanese actors when you have actors in a show like this that they aren't speaking English, and this is going to be shown to such a wide English audience. It must be hard to direct certain actors for their performance to make it very, very clear that they are lying, but not in a way that's so over the top and showing the scenery that it's actually going to take away from the realism. So, kind of seeing how Yabushige's actor is trying to portray that, I thought, for me, it was very, very convincing. And again, it's just great to see that Yabushige's character, especially in this type of show with this sort of level of civility that needs to be maintained the whole way throughout. It's great to see him actively trying to be between two worlds and try to save face and trying to play the game and try to play into the plausible deniability, but him also so clearly lying, and Toranaga seeing through this, and Yabushige not even really trying that hard. It's very much a means of both men are going through the motions in this particular scene, which is why it really had a big effect on me. I thought that with regards to Omi, it's great to see progression for him as a direct result of the previous episode of him getting the regiment, but then also Yabushige's reaction to that in being very, very adamant in that when he says that this regiment, it does not belong to you at all, it belongs to me. Him just putting Omi in his place so directly when he says that. And of course, Omi then falling to his knees as a way of giving visual explication for that story beat, I thought was very, very strong. And even just, as I've mentioned tons of times before, just like seeing the production in the background of all that, just the way the scenery looks is just absolutely magnificent, as pretty much every scene in this show is. I thought that I'll be referring to this kind of continuously as I go through the rest of the episode, but just at the top of it, I have to say the whole pheasant storyline does a terrific job in showing the cultural clash. Even just the introduction of that, of Blackthorn and Fuji trying to talk to one another, the language barrier and of course the cultural barrier as well. And you can understand where both sides are coming from so well. Just for that to be introduced worked so well, but I'll be talking about that more as it goes on. I love seeing both in this episode and in everything we've seen so far, just the degree to which Mariko truly plays things as close to the chest emotionally as she can. She's such an interesting character, and that'll come up a little bit more, I suppose, as we're talking about like the big scene of the episode, which you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But just even seeing the little moments there which directly follow the scene in which the pheasant storyline is introduced, I just wanted to just mention really briefly. I think, talking about the scene in which Blackthorn meets Buntaro kind of formally within his home and everything that happens there, it really exemplifies for me the fact that Blackthorn can be so naive and just basically a downright knucklehead, but he's such a conscientious person. We've had that all the way since episode 1. But again, just seeing the degree of thought that he puts into his circumstances as well as Mariko's circumstances, where he basically, in just as many words, says, what are we going to do about the fact that we had sex and now your husband has come back from the dead? What's going to happen there? And Mariko, of course, giving him a very placid answer, that being what I was referring to with playing things close to the chest emotionally as she can. I just think and then seeing the way in which he does interact with Buntaro was so fantastic, because both men at this particular point have been characterized so well in the previous 4 episodes that when we do see their conflict, it's just going to be very, very believable. And right before I move on to the actual dinner scene itself, I do have to point out how much I loved seeing Blackthorn interacting with the gardener with regards to the stone, because we know where all that is going to go for the rest of the episode. We know that something like that hasn't just been presented to us for no reason, but nonetheless it does reinforce the characterization of Blackthorn very strongly there. And having that scene end and then bleed into the next with Fuji nervously saying dinner is served, it's just creating such a sense of foreboding for us as audience members. So as for the dinner scene itself, in which Blackthorn is serving up what he's serving up, first of all, having Mariko say, it is our loss, that is just like politely declining it, saying that we are very particular eaters and it is our loss. That is such a hilarious way for her to basically say, get that fucking food away from me. I just love just the moments of dark humor that come, more so dry humor that come from the level of civility that they have to maintain. I loved how Blackthorn was just immediately able to pick up on the disrespect from Buntaro in that scene. I think when both men are binge drinking the sake as a bit of a challenge to one another and they're both aware of what's going on, it's very interesting to see how the roles of masculinity are addressed in a way there. And again, just going back to the dry humor, even Fuji saying, pour that stew into the sea, was really, really great. I thought that Blackthorn's toast that he makes right before things really hit the fan had a lot of personality to it. You get a sense of camaraderie and good nature that seems to be a lot more crude and vulgar in comparison to Japanese culture, which again works very, very well for reinforcing both his character and the overarching theme of the show. And I do got to give a shout out. I haven't actually mentioned it in the show thus far, but the actor who plays Buntaro is just doing a fantastic job. He really, really comes across as intimidating in this show. So I gotta really commend the actor there for what he's bringing to the role. There's so much tension created in the bow sequence. I absolutely loved it. As I said in the reaction itself, I bet that the filmmakers just had such a blast creating that one shot of the arrow flying past Mariko's face with the combination of CGI and practical effects there is just terrific. And it was great characterization for her in that it showed her stoic nature, with her being so close to death, how stoic she's able to be with an arrow going like right by her face. Just a fantastic shot and fantastic moment overall. I thought it was, and this is kind of great in which it ties into the aforementioned masculinity a second ago. I thought it was very interesting to see Blackthorn wishing for women to be treated better, in that how that characterizes both himself and Buntaro for reasons that are self-evident I don't need to mention. But it shows a culture clash as well as their respective characterization. Just having so many moments, both in this episode and the series itself, do that. It's something where I know it can maybe come across as a bit repetitive to mention it again and again, but it has to be done in the sense that for the show to continuously bring these things up, and every single time they just hit the target so well, in which you're able to address these overarching themes and deliver on the characterization, I'm just really blown away by it. I mean, I'm not even at the end of the episode and you're already getting the sense that I think that this is one of the best episodes of the series thus far. And I mean, it probably is. It's just doing such a genuinely entertaining and well-executed job of presenting the themes through the characters in a way that doesn't seem preachy. Nonetheless, when it does come to the concepts that are being dealt with, we have, of course, Mariko giving us the backstory of her very tragic past and how she wants to kill herself, but instead she's being ordered to live as punishment by Buntaro and just his overall disdain for her family name. It's without a doubt one of the darkest concepts presented in the show thus far. And of course, Buntaro's subsequent beating of Mariko afterwards is very, very difficult to watch, as you more than likely saw in my reaction there. I think that what makes this show a welcome breath of fresh air in comparison to other shows we won't name, the show seems to be very committed to showing the violence against women in a way that's very tasteful. It doesn't try to in any way glorify what's happening to them or, make it visually appealing to the audience the way other shows would. That would be very insulting, and that would if I knew that this would be the type of show to do something like that, I wouldn't be watching it. So to see that they are taking a mature, a very respectful approach is something that I do got to commend them for. And from a storytelling point of view, it makes things just come across way stronger. The idea of implication, the idea of the iceberg effect of like hinting towards certain things without actually showing it. It gives it so much more maturity and believability. Honestly, it hones things in, and it makes sure that the show isn't deviating into doing things just purely for the sake of doing them. It doesn't do style over substance just purely for the sake of it. So again, a small moment, but I do have to pick up on it, especially with the way that scene ends with Mariko deliberately saying, "This house is a curse." Like, that is a line that holds so much weight in a show such as Shogun. Like, the way in which mythology is represented and depicted and just respected, but I suppose maybe a better term is just adhered to in a show such as this. And following that, when Blackthorn and Buntaro do approach one another, Buntaro is still showing the level of civility he is and offering his apologies is also so strong. And to me, as I was rewatching this episode, and that scene in particular, it really struck me that so much of what the show is doing is it's showing how these characters create masks for themselves. I think that so many drama series are about that. It is about characters creating a mask for themselves, but it's different in that, as opposed to other shows where a character has to adorn a new identity and wear a mask, such as in the likes of Black Sails or Better Call Saul even. Here, it's the entire society that's expected to wear a mask with Japanese tradition. It allows characters such as Buntaro in this scene to accept responsibility whilst also taking none whatsoever, which I thought was just so strong. The next morning, the subsequent fallout to all that, the dialogue between Blackthorn and Mariko was just absolutely fantastic. Him acting as such a fantastic foil from Mariko's stoicism and emotional repression as well. Him saying stuff such as, "You're shuffling around with your manners," and in particular him saying, "You'd live in anguish to spite your husband. What becomes of you?" I just loved it, start to finish. There's so, at this point, it's just, again, to use that term, it's so self-evident as to how impressive scenes of acting and the performances, but just, again, more importantly, how the overarching themes of the show are just really illustrated so well in moments such as those. So much of the philosophical conflict between both of those characters comes from the discussion of being, the prison of freedom versus the prison of oneself. I think that this show, for as much as the show does a great job in being a companion piece to maybe the history side of things, it can very much be seen as a companion piece to the philosophical concepts of freedom and the attachment to freedom, something that was basically the whole way through the likes of Attack on Titan. I think the show just did a fantastic job there. So all this does bring us then back to the aforementioned storyline of the pheasant, which I think is one of the strongest storylines at this point. And who would have thought it would have come from something as innocuous as a dead pheasant? But I suppose that is the point of it, isn't it? It shows the casual nature of execution in this culture and how expected it is as a means of just maintaining social order to begin with. Blackthorn is truly conflicted in this moment in saying, life has no value to you, just the meaningless rituals you're trapped in. Him saying that to Toranaga, and then Mariko is very immediately able to rebuke him by saying, "Your words are what gave it meaning." And Blackthorn being truly devastated in that moment when that is said to him, I thought was just so, so powerful. Mariko saying, "We live and we die, we control nothing beyond that." That occurring just right before the earthquake comes was just a great means of visual confirmation for the story concept. I really, really love that moment. And of course, then when we do get that visual representation of the earthquake occurring and Toranaga being saved by Blackthorn, we got the level of mutual respect then coming full circle when Blackthorn actually offers Toranaga his swords in that moment. There's the wry laughter that comes from Toranaga in that moment because he obviously knows the origin of the swords themselves. But be that as it may, it just worked so well for Toranaga's character and Blackthorn's character in that instance. And I think that the episode just did such a fantastic job of showing us how the Japanese tradition is appropriately comparable to the environment itself. It's just an unavoidable harbinger of death the whole way through. And even after that, after Blackthorn returns to the village and he sees the state that Fuji is in, him going out of his way to fix the placement of the stone that the gardener used to attend to, it just illustrates the concept even further. Him setting the stone back into place and how that mirrors what Mariko had said to him earlier when he first experiences the baby earthquake previously in the series, where she says to him that, we build our houses to be brought up as quickly as they're torn down, and then seeing that now being reinforced with him setting the stone back in place, I thought was so, so strong. As I mentioned in the reaction itself, the spy blaming the gardener was such a clever tactic, and I thought it was just such a great way of tying those two separate story threads together. And, following that, we have the final scene of this episode in which we very much have our Lady Oriba has entered the chat moment. I just thought it was a fantastic setup for the succeeding episode. I should say Ochiba, pardon me, my mispronunciation. It just, I feel as though a great deal of what was done there was self-evident enough and that it doesn't require elaboration. But again, it's just seeing that so much tension has been created throughout this episode, and now just at the tail end of it, we have her very much now coming into the storyline as a formidable force against Toranaga, but also we don't know exactly what her relationship is with Ishido, but we do know that precisely from what she is saying to him and just the tone in which she's delivering it, Ishido does not want to mess with her either. She is very, very much going to be a further threat for the characters in this show. So overall, I just thought this was an absolutely fantastic episode of the series. Like, again, just without a doubt, one of the strongest of the whole show thus far. You know, from the rewatch, I'm so glad. From my rewatch has shown me that it's just so great how they were able to take things slow with the Ishido storyline in order to adequately bring in Ochiba, meaning that the eventual payoff is going to be far greater because of that. Initially, I thought that maybe this is taking things a bit too slow. Maybe are they dragging... As much as I did like the characterization with Blackthorn, are they dragging it out a bit too much? But again, the rewatch with those small scenes, those small, very subtle scenes with Ishido shows, no, they're taking their time with all of this for a reason, and they're very much adhering to the story that they want to tell, and you know that whatever is going to come with the second half of this show, with the succeeding 5 episodes, is really, really going to deliver. And I suppose then the last thing I just want to talk about was, for the Blackthorn storyline itself, it is definitely the strongest storyline we've had from thus far, in my opinion, just in the sense that so many of the overarching themes of the series, the culture clash, the merits of Japanese tradition, as well as just true existential dilemma, all of these were illustrated here in a way that both reinforced and progressed Blackthorn as a character, that I just have to commend it for that. You know, the further unveiling of Mariko's backstory worked as payoff, as well as setup for even more unveiling, presumably, as the series is going to continue. I've only seen one episode. Only one episode has aired past this point, so I don't know exactly what's going to be unveiled, but I mean, it is still very easy to infer from an episode such like this, especially with it happening at the exact middle point of the entire series, that truly more is to come for Mariko's storyline and just her character in general. I'm just so excited to see what her character is about as the story progresses. And yeah, I mean, I think that is pretty much it. It was such a fantastic episode that I just really did truly love from beginning to end. And I think that's all I want to say about that. Thanks for watching.